Hello, and welcome to episode number 85 of the Lines podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by Brett Collson and FairwayJay. We break down all the big bets, all the big news, all of the comings and goings and happenings here in this crazy gambling industry of ours. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts as well. So please go in, subscribe, rate, and review. We appreciate all of those 5 stars and certainly will help us climb the rankings there. More people can find this podcast at TheLines US, at PlayPicks US on the Twitter machine if you guys want to follow us there on social media. Pretty interesting week in the NFL, culminated by a very interesting Monday night football game. We will talk about that here in just a second. We will talk about how that affected futures odds. There are ways that you can bet on an event that doesn't happen until April. And no, I am not talking about the Masters. That is already up over at FanDuel. We'll talk about that as well. A little in-play strategy betting. And of course, as always, we'll look ahead to the week in the NFL to come here. But Brett, let's go ahead and start things off here with Monday Night Football and how things went there. You and I kind of handicapped this way, the game on Monday night a different way. I didn't end up betting a side, but I did bet the total, so I lost as well. I ended up betting props that I lost. I just thought that this Rams defense was built to. Again, we did not say stop Lamar Jackson. We thought they could contain him. That was quite obvious on the very first drive of the entire game that they had no clue and were completely lost as to what was going on out there. This is one of those times where, we've talked about it several times on this podcast, where sometimes you go back, you look at what you did, you try to figure out where you went wrong. And I think this is probably a situation for you and I to sit back and take a look at this and try and figure out at least how we just got so incredibly blinded and we're so incredibly wrong.
Oh yeah. We talked last week on the podcast about right side versus wrong side. And I argued that it's near impossible to say whether a team was on the right side after a single game. There's just too many variables that can impact the outcome, the score of one game. But then there are games like Monday night. And like you said, for those who didn't listen to our podcast on Friday, I was heavy on the Los Angeles Rams against Baltimore. Rams getting 3 or 3.5, depending on where and when you got them. I loved everything about this play, the market. We could sell the Ravens at their highest price point ever. The matchups, I thought the Ravens had some plus matchups, or at the very least, higher expectation than perceived by the market, especially in pass protection. And I could not have been more wrong about all of it. That was an onslaught. Like what I thought the Rams would be able to do in protecting Goff and allowing him to make throws did not happen. Like we knew the Rams would blitz. They've been blitzing a lot since they got Jimmy Smith back in that lineup. They went after Goff from the get-go and said, beat us. And Jared Goff couldn't do it because he has zero trust in his offensive line. He cannot pick up blitzes and where they're coming from. He's just getting the ball out too early. Receivers weren't out of their breaks and the ball was flying by their heads. It was painful to watch last night, man. And on the other side of the ball, I mean, Greg Roman's just putting on a clinic with that ground game. They are unstoppable. And that Rams secondary looked lost in the passing game too. So I was certainly on the wrong side of this. And like you said, it's one of those rare situations where you have to make substantial adjustments on both sides going forward. The Ravens are a machine on offense. Like we've now seen this several weeks against good defenses. That's enough to tell me that this is probably a couple points better than I had been capping them. And the Rams are complete dust, I guess. I mean, this team is sucked into a long-term deal with a bad quarterback that they can't protect. And this is a really bad situation in LA and a really bad read by me last night.
Jay, I'm a big prop player. I went into this game. They had set Lamar Jackson at 70.5 yards rushing, which is more rushing yards in a week than you will see for most running backs when you look at these player props a lot. And then they had Mark Ingram set at 53.5. They even had Gus Edwards listed as well. I mean, it was a situation where I'm looking at a Rams defense allowing 3.3 yards per carry, had been playing extremely well over the last few weeks. And I just, I thought that they were going to be sharp enough to go in and realize that, hey, at the very least, and he probably could have done it with his arm too, because I think we're selling Lamar Jackson short on what he can do with his arm as well. But I thought at the very least, the idea would be, if he can beat us with his arm, then let's let him beat us with his arm, as opposed to allowing this team to just pin their ears back and run the ball down our throat. The over on Lamar Jackson was destroyed in the second quarter of the game. The over for Mark Ingram got there in the second quarter of the game. I had the under on both of these rushing props. This Rams team did not have any answer whatsoever for the Ravens here. And I think it just kind of goes back to sometimes where we look at these numbers and I'm a slave to the numbers sometimes, I think, and I'm a slave to the math. And my eyeball test told me that this Ravens team was better than this Rams team. My eyeball test told me that Lamar Jackson and this team was going to be able to do whatever they wanted to do against this Rams team. But I went to the numbers and I just was a slave to the numbers here. And I think sometimes maybe we have to just break away from what we have on our, on our sheets here and how we're looking at these games when you just have such a bad feeling in your gut. And I had a bad feeling about it, and it punished me last night. I got hammered.
And that happens, I'm actually surprised. I had my best Sunday of the season and surprisingly didn't come back and play the Ravens because I talked so much about the rushing guidelines and knew they'd have some success. Didn't think they'd quite have this much success against the Rams, running for 285, 48 carries, just domination, as you said. And Jackson did not get there on one of his props, which was combined rushing and passing yards. I know a bookmaker here in Las Vegas had 296.5. He didn't get there, but it was still a tremendous performance.
The only
by
prop
him.
bet I won, by the way. That was the only one. That was the only one I won. So good for lucky.
Yeah. And then there was another one that took a lot of action, and that was Gurley over his rushing yards. And of course, he never even sniffed at 6 carries, 22 yards. So bad performance. The Rams have had offensive line issues, and I agree. I thought they'd at least put up a better effort at home and slow somewhat the Ravens train, but it's been quite something here, and I think they're averaging 40 points a game over the last 5, and by far they're blowing away these rushing numbers from many, many years here. They're at 210 a game now, and that's like 60 yards clear of the next closest team. And it's a narrative that I go back to, that the media we keep hearing, this is a passing league. And if you just go to the top of the rushing teams that are running the ball the best this season, you'll see playoff teams are there. Then you go to the top of the passing stats, and you'll see 2 teams up there like Kansas City, who's still contending, but maybe from 3 to 7, they're losing teams. And if you control the line of scrimmage and do what the Ravens done and then mix it in, he's got a great tight end weapon. I still want to see maybe Jackson throw it. He's got an arm, obviously, but I want to see him a little more consistency, deep ball. And again, I think there's some NFC teams that if they do make a run through the AFC to get to the Super Bowl, there's some really good defensive teams better, I think, in the AFC or in the NFC. And then also we saw what he did against New England, Jackson. So he's proven that he's right now the MVP moving forward, although the Seattle quarterback still might have a stay down the stretch. But there's still football, and we're not giving them anything. And the Ravens are on a tremendous run. They've got to finish it out here, maybe get one of the top 2 seeds. But you can't argue that last night he showed again. He's been very near unstoppable here for a better part of 6 weeks and performed very well again.
Ravens will be 6-point, as well as we sit right now recording this, home favorites over the 49ers in week 13. We'll talk about that a little bit later here. But Brett, we did have some fallout from the Ravens winning in the fashion that they did over the last few weeks here and how they've looked. And of course, getting it done in prime time where everybody's eyeballs are on this team. We have them now making a significant move as far as the Super Bowl odds.
Yeah, for the first time all season, we're seeing them emerge as the favorites to win the Super Bowl at Westgate as of this afternoon. Baltimore 3-1 to win the Super Bowl. New England 7-2. So that's the first I've seen since like week 1 where the Patriots are not favored to win the Super Bowl. We're not seeing that movement here on the East Coast. I think there's certainly some bias as far as where the bets are coming in. New England's still favored at DraftKings and FanDuel, plus 280 at DraftKings, plus 300 at FanDuel. But in Vegas, at the very least at Westgate, I haven't seen any other books yet. But the Ravens are now favored to win Super Bowl 54.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, it'd be very hard to I guess it would be pretty hard to argue after what we've seen. I mean, it's as Jay mentioned, there's still several weeks left of the season here, but as we sit, on a Tuesday of Thanksgiving week heading into week 13, it would be very hard to argue that Baltimore isn't the best team, I think, in football right now. And they pretty much showed it from top to bottom. We talked about, when we did talk about this game, the one thing we did mention is how much better their defense has been playing since the acquisition of Marcus Peters and getting Jimmy Smith back. We saw that yet again last night where, Goff is bad anyway, but even then, they just played so incredibly well. Marcus Peters with an awesome over-the-shoulder interception. I mean, like this secondary kind of quietly here, Brett, is probably the best secondary in all of football at this point when you just look at playmakers and how they're able to line up, because you're able to put Jimmy Smith, Marcus Peters, and then move Marlon Humphrey over into the slot. Like, you have three top quality, like high level starting corners in this league. And when teams are starving just to have one corner that can actually play, the fact that they have three is just such an incredible advantage in today's NFL.
Yeah, and that creates a lot of opportunity for them to get after the quarterback. Like, we've said, they have been blitzing a lot more since they've gotten Smith and Peters, and it's just a very different defense than we saw when they lost to the Browns earlier this season. It's been a complete different team. Scary good. And I can totally understand why their odds are moving to win the whole thing this year.
So you mentioned, we'll just talk DraftKings odds here. Patriots 280, Ravens 350. But Jay, we're seeing the Saints at 550, the 49ers at 600. And then you kind of get into the 10-to-1s and longer here with Seahawks, Chiefs, Packers, and Vikings coming in at 10, 11, 15, and 18-to-1 respectively here. A lot of football left to play. There is certainly some capable teams here still on the list. You cannot bet the Bengals anymore. They are donezo, off the board. Are there any of these other teams here? And I know you're not a big futures guy, but for the people that might want to get involved, are there any of these teams that you think are feisty, at least if they were to get into the playoffs and somebody wanted to take kind of a 10-to-1 or longer shot here?
Well, if you mentioned that number 10-to-1, I've mentioned on this podcast before that I was pretty bullish on the Vikings still, and I have them at 20-to-1. I did play them in the season. I'm 20, I'm 18. I played them at 16 recently, and now they're down to 13. It was a team that I thought would only see their odds drop because I looked at their schedule and I thought if they can keep moving forward, their schedule, I like them this week against Seattle, taking 3 Monday night in a primetime game. And you look at the rest of their schedule, Detroit at the Chargers, they'll be short favorite, maybe 3.5, depending how these next few weeks play out at LA. And then they have the big game in week 16 against Green Bay. That could be for the division title. And then the Bears to finish at home. They're 5-0 at home. If they were to be able to get into the playoffs and by chance one of the San Fran or New Orleans slip up a little bit and they could by chance get a bye, they've proven they're an exceptional team at home. They've got the balance. They also have, I think, a plenty good enough defense. So in terms of value, if you look at the NFC, I think they're as good as any of the teams. You can maybe argue it's because of San Francisco's strength on defense, and if they had to go there, that's obviously would be a tough spot. But I think from a value above 10-to-1, they're the best bet of the group you mentioned that are going to be in the playoffs and have a chance. Seattle, let me just comment on them. I haven't been as high, but give so much credit, and Wilson keeps bringing them through. I'm not certain their defense is up to snuff, but the big game, of course, coming up will be at the end of the season against San Francisco if they can hang on and still be within range there. But the Niners, there's no easy schedules moving forward. The Niners next 2 weeks at Baltimore and at New Orleans. They've got tough moving forward. They finish at Seattle. The Saints have San Francisco in 2 weeks. They play Indy. They got to finish at Tennessee and Carolina. So there's a lot to be played. And I think the NFC has 4 quality teams to get through. And right now, it appears in the AFC that New England and Baltimore are the best, but KC maybe makes a move still down the stretch, and Houston's got to prove it. We saw what they did on the road the other week, so I'm not convinced on them yet either.
Brett, incredibly tough road. Don't get me wrong. But we're just talking about if you wanted to take a lottery ticket shot here. Bills at 66-1, Browns at 70-1. and you kind of take a look at this Bills team that has the odds say that they are definitely going to make the playoffs this year. Then you look at the Browns, who go Steelers, Bengals, Cardinals, and then you do have that Ravens game, but then Bengals again. So the Bengals twice, Steelers with Duck at quarterback, and absolutely no run game to speak of whatsoever. Literally would have to win this game on nothing but defense. They're going to need to get like 3 defensive scores to beat the Browns. And then, let's chalk up the Ravens as a loss. And then the Cardinals would definitely be a tough game, but one that I definitely would say that they are, very live in and certainly could win. So, if you win Steelers, you win both Bengals. Now you're looking at a win at the Cardinals, and if that's the case, Browns probably getting in the playoffs. And as I mentioned, your Bills definitely going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, don't bet the Bills; they have no chance. The Browns.
I disagree, but yes, go ahead.
The Bills aren't winning. The Bills aren't going to win the Super Bowl. They can't do it with Josh Allen. But the Browns, I can get there because you've got some contenders in the AFC South wiping each other out here late in the season. And like you said, the Browns' schedule is super soft, and they have the talent. They don't have Myles Garrett anymore, but they have the talent on both sides of the ball. I think to maybe cause some ruckus in the playoffs. They don't have the coaching. And so, that's obviously the big issue.
There's definitely not, but you're, as far as like you're saying, but if we're looking at someone who wants to, play a lottery ticket, 70-1 for a team that with a schedule, like theirs, I think that someone could get a decent sweat out of that at least.
And speaking of lottery tickets, if you're feeling frisky, and hear me out on this one, if there is a time to bet the Philadelphia Eagles, it is right now. Their Super Bowl odds dropped from 25-1 to 40-1 this past week, but that division is still wide open, and they're going to be getting healthier here down the stretch, hopefully, with games against the Dolphins, Giants, Redskins. They're at home against Dallas, and then the Giants again to close out the season.
Look at that schedule. Wow.
Like, that is a schedule you dream of when you're coming down the stretch with your backs against the wall. And we've seen them kind of sneak up at the end of the year before when they did it a couple of years ago. They were long shots then with Nick Foles. I could see them getting to the playoffs and doing something. So at 40-1, I think that's the best lottery ticket on the board right now.
And I think this is why we talk about why we prefer to play these kind of futures in season as opposed to preseason, because, you're going to just get exponentially better odds for teams that you feel like still are live, and you're really not going to get that much worse odds for teams that are good that just continue to be good. So Jay, I think you've said that here on the pod several different times. Like the teams with short odds to begin the season, as the season progresses, you're not really going to get that much worse odds on them if you decide down the line to go ahead and take them. But value does present itself as we get further into the season on teams that we do think still are live, whether it be because they're going to get people back from injury, or whether it be because, as we just pointed out with a couple of these different teams, they just have cupcake schedules down the stretch.
Yeah, and one thing, I didn't have the Bills in Cleveland written down or their schedules in front of me, but I actually played the Bills earlier in the season 66-1, and now I didn't double check their odds and just heard you say that they were 66-1 now. So I thought at the time when I played them that their numbers would come down, and they did. But I agree, they're not Super Bowl caliber, but you've seen stranger things happen. And if you're going to take a flyer, I think it is in the AFC. I think you're on the right track with potentially Cleveland or Buffalo as a consideration. And yeah, you can argue, boy, Baltimore looks unstoppable. New England, if they're at home and they've got their defense is every bit as good as it's shown despite a softer schedule. But I think if you're going to see, to me, a longer shot come out, I believe it's going to come through the AFC, because I think the 4 teams that are very solid in the NFC, one of them are going to come, and I don't think it's Dallas or Philadelphia is not one of those that are in there. I don't believe they're coming through.
If you are anybody that likes to lock up your money for 6 months, here we go. We have an option for you here, Brett. Over at FanDuel, they've gone ahead and released the NFL draft odds. So we have the first showing of the NFL draft odds here popping up at FanDuel over on the East Coast. And this is the only thing they have listed right now is just for number 1 overall pick. Of course, there will be a ton more listed as we get closer to the actual draft itself. But the number 1 overall pick, Joe Burrow, even money for Joe Burrow to be the number one overall pick. Chase Young plus 175, Justin Herbert at plus 350, Andrew Thomas plus 1,000, Tua coming in at 1,100, and Fromm at 1,900. So here we are, Burrow coming out at even money. So they are thinking that Joe Burrow is going to be the next quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals.
I love it. I'm one of those nerds who looks at draft mocks all year long and like reads Dane Brugler at the Athletic and his write-ups during the whole college football season. So this is pretty exciting just to see that their odds are already up, and not a surprise at all to see Joe Burrow at even money. I wonder what his odds would have been before the season to be the number one pick. I mean, Tua had to be like close to a lock there. He's now plus 1,100. It's pretty amazing. It just goes to show that nothing is a lock when it comes to the NFL draft. So I never advise getting in early on some of these markets and betting huge favorites, as we saw with the Heisman as well. So Burrow is kind of shaking things up here, hasn't he?
It is pretty interesting, I think, as well, Jay, as we take a look at this, because I mean, it's not locked up, right, that the Bengals are going to get the number one overall pick in the draft. And it looks like they have decided with the move here to go back to Andy Dalton that they don't want to finish this season without a win. It looks like they have decided, like, hey, we want to at least get a win on the board here. Dolphins still sitting with only 2 wins. You have the Redskins still sitting out there with only 2 wins. And, it's not out of the realm of possibility. The Bengals could sneak in a couple of wins here this season. So pretty interesting that Burrow is just, it makes perfect sense to Burrow to the Bengals. But, say it's the Dolphins or say that it's the Redskins, then it doesn't make sense for Burrow to go there. So pretty interesting that they're basically saying here that the odds makers have penciled in the Bengals as the number one overall pick here to take Joe Burrow number one overall. And I think if the Bengals do get it, I mean, they pretty much told Andy Dalton they're moving on from him as they benched him earlier in the season. So I think the writing was on the wall that the Bengals are going to take a quarterback.
It appears almost definitely. I'm not a talent evaluator for NFL. Burrow certainly appears to have the skill sets, and he's moved up the ranks to maybe be considered number one. But the Bengals, show me where they're going to win 2 games even. They'd have to beat the Jets this week, but at Cleveland, New England, and then Cleveland at home. Their potential is week 16 at Miami to get a win. This is a tough team. We thought Miami was the worst, but record-wise, it appears it's going to be Cincinnati, and they fit the mold to definitely have the quarterback come number one.
Brett, I know you're not a Burrow believer as far as him being worthy of the number one overall pick here, but again, it looks like when you kind of just when you connect all the dots here, the benching of Dalton, the experiment with Finley that did not work out, the going back to Dalton now because Finley didn't work out, and all that, it just seems like the dots pretty much all lead to Burrow here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talked about this probably, what was it, 3 weeks ago, a month ago, when the Bengals were giving Finley a shot. I loved that move just to see what they have with Finley. And if they don't have it, then you take a quarterback. I love Chase Young. I think he's a huge difference maker. But at the same time, if you pass on a can't-miss guy, and if Burrow ends up being that guy, that's going to hang over your franchise for a long time. And there are some other good quarterbacks here. I mean, Herbert's fine. Tua has been the guy that's been talked about as the can't miss guy for a long time here in this class. So, I mean, there are guys they could get later on, maybe in the draft. Jake Fromm is there as well, but I think it has to be Burrow right now.
Yeah, it's weird to say that for an 0-11 team that I actually like what they did, but I mean, in a weird way, I like what the 0-11 team did here because you put Finley out there. The guy couldn't hardly complete 50% of his passes, looked like a complete deer in the headlights, absolutely no semblance of any sort of offense whatsoever with him under center. So at least if you're the Bengals, it's not one of these things where they go, well, do we need to take a quarterback here? Because, I mean, we had Finley and we didn't really know what he's all about. I mean, they at least put him out there. They threw him to the wolves essentially, but if there was at least some sort of anything that maybe led you to believe that he could possibly, with more starts or more reps or more whatever, be that guy for you, then maybe it becomes a decision for the Bengals. But, again, barely completed 50% of his passes. And I mean, I'm sure you guys watched at least some of these Bengals games over the last several weeks. And I mean, the guy just doesn't, it's the reason why we had really never heard of him whenever they decided to stick him under center, because he just doesn't have what it takes to be an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, and I think I like what they're doing with Dalton, too. I mean, it comes down to culture versus future, right? Like, do you want to bring back a team of players who went winless last year with that stigma around them all season? I think I would just rather go get a win and then see what happens from there.
Jay, I want to talk a little bit about in-play strategy here because, we try to hit on some of these different topics in the industry as we do this podcast each week. And one of the ones is in-game. And so, and this is just top of mind for me. And so wanted to kind of get this out there. But, I was on the under last night, and it was very evident to me very quickly that was going to end very poorly for me, that was a bad bet. As we talked about at the top of the show, I assumed that the Rams were going to be able to slow down the Ravens, and that was not the case. And so I just saw real quick that it looked like I had a bet that was going to be a loser. I jump in game, took the over. And so, whatever, basically bought out of it and ended up pushing for the night. Now it depends on how much you're betting. I think, if you're a small bettor, then, and you're only going to lose $25 or $50 or something like that, then, I don't necessarily think that you have to be getting in and trying to kind of hedge off of a bad position. But, I think it's something we can kind of drive home here. And I'd like to hear your in-play strategy as well. But for me, the reason I watch so much of these games, and the reason I am paying attention to 4 or 5 games at a time, especially the ones that I have significant action on, is, I'm looking for opportunities where I either can get more action down when I feel like I'm on a good side of a bet, or when I know that I'm holding a dog, I'll suck it up right there, right then and there. I don't wait till the end of the game to lick my wounds. Like, if I feel like I can buy off of this thing and save myself some money, I'll do it. And, last night was a case of that. And I think that maybe more people can, instead of just always just accepting that they're holding a loser, can maybe come out with, whatever, losing a little bit of juice, but you're not losing an entire steak.
Yeah, you have to be able, certainly if you're betting live and in game, you want to be watching as much as you can. I know guys that bet half times that don't necessarily have to see as much of the game. They can look at the numbers, figure what maybe the book has as liability, but also some of the statistical things. But in game, I definitely know this, that for example, the Cowboys and Patriots game was one, I think it was Caesar's biggest in-game loss on a total this season. And so when you can get ahead, or you see not only the weather situation, but teams struggling maybe to move the ball, and obviously the defense is stepping up, that the in-game number is just going to keep coming down if there's going to be less scoring. So you want to try to get ahead of that and make the play and stick to it, and you have the opportunity in an in-game to keep betting it. And that's what happened in a game between the Cowboys and the Patriots. As far as your other strategy, if you realize that, like you said, you may be on the wrong side, that's the eye test. And it's also, I think, looking at the line of scrimmage, how teams are moving the ball, are they going to be able to stop them? That all comes into play. And all that being said, I've seen many times, and you've been in the sports books, I've been in the poke rooms, and I listen to people say, they're up 20-0 at halftime. How are they ever going to stop? But you see teams come back. I mean, it was just, 3 weeks ago, we saw the Bears were just horrific on the road and just getting annihilated and looked terrible. And they come back and a couple touchdowns in the second half. And so it's not always that easy to see that adjustment. But I think from a total standpoint, and seeing that the teams are struggling and the defense is really playing well, you can get hopefully ahead of that and especially now with the weather at this time of year.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that people can look for, if you're not doing this recreational, if you're doing it and you want to turn a profit and you're trying to make some money here, is looking at middle opportunities as well. And that's the other thing that I really look for in game, especially if I have a middle that lands on one of the big time key numbers, is one of the things that I'm also like really looking for as well. So, I think that that's something, if you're, again, trying to make some money in game, if you can find where you can middle, and that middle is a 3 or that middle is a 7, I'll take the shot on that more times than not. Now, I might be ending up paying juice that night and not winning as much money as I could have, but so many games land on 3 and 7 that, I will more times than not, if I have that opportunity, will go ahead and try and take it because, winning two bets is better than winning just one. So just another thing that you can definitely take a look at with in play, that is something that if a game goes, quickly awry in one direction or the other, sometimes opens up some pretty decent little middle opportunities and something that you can pay attention to. And Brett, I'm pretty sure if people aren't real sure about the whole middling thing, you've got an article over on TheLines that kind of explains everything, right?
I'm pretty sure we do. I'll have to bump that up to the homepage because, that's definitely an interesting one with the in-play. I haven't played much in-play yet. I'm waiting for New York to get its act together over here and launch online betting. So I haven't dabbled, but I have played around with the apps during some of these island games and just seeing how the odds move after each play and the factors that shift these numbers. I mean, is there anything like in the game flow that you guys look for, like an injury to maybe an offensive lineman or a pass rusher whose value to a team might go overlooked by the algorithm, or like motivation? I know I saw some sharp people on the Titans second half on Sunday because like we talked about, the light is out with this Jags team and they weren't even trying. And so I think a lot of people saw that as an opportunity. I mean, what do you guys look for? If you're not looking for middles, what else are you guys looking for?
Injuries. So, I think it was Lane Johnson, the Eagles star tackle. If he goes down like we saw, and it's during the course of the game, you definitely along the line of scrimmage, even more so than some of the skill position players, because if they're going to struggle now offensively without a key guy in that particular incident when Johnson went down, they just couldn't get the ball moving at all. But now we've seen that it's more than that with the Eagles, because we've seen in a few weeks they haven't been able to move the ball at all, or very limited. So injuries obviously a key component, but back to some of the others is whether you're going to see the adjustments in the lines. And I think Matt makes a good point about middling. If you're really on top and watching it and you're anticipating and looking at, are they going to make three? Are they going to get a first down? Or are they going to have to punt? And you're going to see the numbers and in-game numbers change. You can hopefully take advantage of some of that.
Yeah, you guys both nailed for me. I mean, I'm mostly looking for offensive line injuries in a game, and that will help me kind of get my in-game strategy a little bit better as well. The algorithms that's the one part I think that we definitely have an advantage over the algorithms with is the offensive line injuries, and especially the impact of the offensive line injuries. Because, like Jay said, if it's one of the really good offensive line players as well, and we know how good an offensive line guy is, and when he goes down, I mean, that can just completely alter and shift a game plan and turn a game right on its head. A center goes out. I mean, center being kind of like the quarterback of the offensive line. Another thing that I really, really look for, because so many things can go wrong when a center goes out as well. So really, really looking for those offensive line injuries in play as well. That helps me kind of get that strategy. But I was one of those. Guys, as soon as the TV came on and saw the weather over there in New England, I was one of the guys also hammering the under on that, like as many times as they would let me do it until they said no thank you. So that was Sunday was also one of my better Sundays in quite a long time. It was a bummer that Monday night ended so crappy for me, but Sunday was great, and that was actually a prime example, Jay, being able to just see right there that was going to be tough for them to kick the ball, throw the ball deep, all kinds of different things that were going to make that game difficult.
No question. I was just double checking the overall numbers, yards per play. Again, surprisingly, the Patriots, Brady made enough plays, but again, they're under 300 yards. We've seen that a few times now recently in their total yardage, but the weather impacted clearly the ability to move the ball and especially inside the scoring range.
All right, Brett, we have 3 games on Thanksgiving Day. It is an amazing day for football. Everybody is home. Everyone's sitting around and everybody is watching. We talked several times about we get very few edges on the sports books. We're paying juice. We're, whatever. We're not getting the odds we think we should get, whatever it might be, but we are getting from DraftKings, from FanDuel, from PointsBet, from all of these books that are trying to get market share. One of the things we do get right from the get-go are awesome deals and sign-up bonuses and free money and match bets and all of the things like that. Well, we have some of those on Thanksgiving as well, and one in particular that you just have to do if you're going to be playing on Thursday.
Yeah, man, the holidays are a time of giving. And if you can believe it, the sports books are getting involved as well. All kinds of promos, like you said, being offered on the Thanksgiving weekend. DraftKings, FanDuel, Fox Bet, free bets, free DFS contests with tens of thousands in guaranteed prizes. There's a bunch of fun cashback promotions for the 3 games on Thursday. DraftKings is giving out free legs in parlays, which I think is hilarious and awesome. Creative stuff that just adds some excitement to the football viewing. So if you're in a state that offers legal sports betting or DFS, there is free money to be had this week. You should definitely take advantage. And we've got all the details on the homepage at TheLines and Play Picks. So definitely check those out before you get too deep into the Thanksgiving partying on Thursday.
Yeah, go ahead and just do it. When you finish listening to this, just go ahead and do it then, because after you get a couple cocktails deep, you're going to forget about these things. So just go ahead and do it now, and don't let these things get past you. But again, they're one of the cool things about the renaissance of what's going on right now and this change of the landscape with sports betting is that people are trying to get your business. And for them to try to get your business, they're doing some of these crazy promotions and cool things that are going on out there. And definitely take advantage of those. Do not be left on the sidelines when it comes to those, because it is positive EV, and anytime we can be positive EV, these are things that we are looking to do. All right, as always, we are talking about some of these look-ahead games here. Now, we do have the 3 games on Thanksgiving, and with people all probably going to be betting these games, I think we should at least take a little bit of time here to give our thoughts. The Bears at the Lions, the Bills at the Cowboys, the Saints at the Falcons. The Bears on the road as 3-point favorites in this one. The Bills traveling to Dallas as 6.5-point dogs, and the Saints traveling to Atlanta as 6.5-point favorites. Brett, right out of the get-go here, let's just start with the stinker on the card here, which is the Bears and Lions. Really, the big thing here is the Lions quarterback situation. We know Matthew Stafford's not going to play, but now Jeff Driscoll has a hamstring injury. We understand that one of the things he brings to the table is his mobility, and they were looking at trying to sign another quarterback. I don't know if that's the writing on the wall here, that he's maybe way worse than they're even kind of letting on here, but Bears 3. I hate the Bears. You hate the Bears. We all hate the Bears. We hate Mitchell Trubisky. We hate Matt Nagy. There's no reason in the world that to like this team other than the fact that you are looking at a Lions team that has a defense that can be exploited, and who in the hell knows is going to be playing quarterback for them. Yeah,
this is the stinker of the week, but it's the most interesting spot of the week from the market side, I think. The look ahead on this game was Lions minus 1.5, and then Detroit embarrassed itself in a loss to the Redskins, although that probably came down to a special teams touchdown for the Redskins. And then the Bears won. They didn't cover against the Giants, but they won. And the line in this game just flipped Sunday night and has now seen significant movement to the key number here as of Tuesday afternoon. There's a lot to look at here, especially, if Driscoll is out, we get David Blau. And how many more points is Jeff Driscoll worth than David Blau? I have no idea, because I didn't know how many points Stafford is worth over Driscoll. So I mean, this is a confusing one. The stubborn guy in me likes the Lions a little bit, just because you know how I love my backup quarterbacks. I don't know how I feel about a third-string quarterback, though, that I've never heard of. So this is one I definitely want to dig into, because I think there might be some value. Yeah, this Lions defense, though, God. 24-year-old undrafted free agent from Purdue that did not really have any sort of pedigree whatsoever at Purdue to be an NFL quarterback, which is pretty interesting here. Jay, when you take a look at this one, Lions again catching points at home against a putrid Bears offense, but this whole quarterback situation with the Lions is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I have some interest in Detroit here. I have something live going into that game. Played Lions on the look ahead and some other bets that I made over the weekend. And so I want to see Driscoll in there, obviously. And I think it's clearly, if he plays, this is a big overreaction. It's not an overreaction yet because the anticipation, they're trying to get ahead of it with the quarterback change. I could definitely understand to see that. But for the Bears to be laying 3 here with Driscoll, if he's good enough and healthy, to me is, well, we saw the look ahead on this, 1.5. Even the opener was 1, and because of his situation, maybe it moved. But yeah, the Lions lost last week. The stats, they controlled for the most, 175 yards rushing at Washington. They held them to 86, and total yards, they were over 130 more. So it was just, 4 turnovers. That's what happens. They're going to lose. And the Bears were not impressive against the Giants. 4.9 yards per play at home against them. So to me, if Driscoll goes, it's an automatic teaser for sure to me on the Lions. And I'll definitely be on Detroit taking 3 if I can get that. And what have the Bears done to warrant this? Their defense is certainly better. Again, if they were home, that tells you they'd be laying like 9. And the quarterback certainly. So you want to avoid, I guess, the bet if it's the backup. To me, you got to watch it and see it, and maybe that brings in in-game betting, and that's certainly why the total has been bet down as well. Anticipation of maybe the backup going or the third stringer going.
Yeah, if this really starts smelling like a David Blau situation, you're probably going to catch me on the under, even if the under is 38.5, which is where it sits right now. Both of these teams, I mean, I was telling Brett, my for the last month, him and I will talk about different games, and there's at least one game a week where I just say to him, "You tell me how this team scores, and then I'll see your side or whatever." Every one of those games is won so far in the last 4 weeks, and so this might be another one of these. Tell me how these goddamn teams score, because seriously, this is just God, this is so putrid. This game.
I think there's a path to the Bears scoring, though. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah, running the ball. Running the ball, I suppose. Yeah, but if that's the case, do the Bears do enough to get this thing to 39? I don't know. I don't know. At least that's the early game.
One more comment. Yeah. Remember, they played recently 20-13, and for listeners that didn't watch or pay attention to Driscoll, he passed 46 times that game for 269 yards. And like you said, he's got the mobility. And so the Lions defense has not been as good. But remember, even at home that game, when the Bears were, I think, fortunate to get the 20-13 win, Chicago only had 13 first downs then. Now they go on the road. You're probably on the right track. But the Lions defense is going to have to play better. And you would definitely think they would back home now after last week's performance. So they'll be ready to play it.
All right, Brett, it's your Bills. They are on the road at the Cowboys, sitting at the game that everyone will definitely be watching because it comes around when everyone will be eating. So tell me, what do you feel here about this Buffalo Bills team on the road at the Cowboys? They are catching 6.5 points as we sit right now, 45.5 the total.
Well, this moved through the key number off the look ahead. So that gets my spidey senses going with the Cowboys coming off the loss to the Patriots and the Bills winning again. And man, that Broncos game was weird. I could not have anticipated just how bad Brandon Allen looked. That dude could not complete a pass on Sunday. It was embarrassing. And the Bills, look, they continue to go out and handle their business. You cannot penalize them. They're winning games that they should win, but it's hard to give them any respect going to Dallas against a good football team. I think this line, this line feels short, man. I feel like this should be 7 or more. So I might get burned again by the Bills, who just continue to cover when I side against them. So we'll see.
I'll tell you, Jay, you look at this, and this Cowboys coaching situation, Jason Garrett has just, every single week, it's like you just look at this and you go, certainly can't do something stupid again this week. And then he just does something stupid again, and he continues to do it and did it again this past week where he decided to kick a field goal when he still needed a touchdown regardless. And it's just, you just continue to shake your head. These guys make 7 figures, and you don't understand how these decisions continue to get made here. I got to be honest, if this thing, and it looks like it's definitely going to move to 7, it might be hard to get me to stay off of this Bills team catching a full touchdown here, strictly because of the way that Jason Garrett and this Cowboys team just continues to underimpress week after week after week after week, despite all the talent, everything that's going on there. He's just hamstringing this team by the way he makes decisions.
Jerry Jones has certainly been loyal to him, and many of his coaches. He's been average at best, clearly. But back to Brett's comment and on the line and where this could potentially go. Yeah, 7. This is going to be a very popular teaser play. We're pretty sure on the Cowboys, and I won't do that. Dallas has not beaten a winning team this year. They have not beat a team with a winning record. I think maybe when they played, maybe when they're going to beat the Bills. Huh? So, think when you're looking at the line, and clearly some things can play out in the game and the penalties, and it's Thanksgiving in Dallas, and how's Dallas going to lose this game at home, and they got to keep the division lead and all of that. Certainly, there's seemingly more motivation, but the Bills' defense, I look at is still statistically they're one of the top 5, and they should be able to keep them in this game. And if you look at it from a line step, but if this game was in Buffalo, they're telling you that the line would be like pick 'em, and Dallas should not even be picked. They should be an underdog at Buffalo. They just should. We talked about this last week. I talked about the quarterbacks and young and tough place to go play. And what is Dallas shown now? They're the number 1 passing team. They're leading the last 3 weeks. They're leading the league in 340 some passing yards a game. Guess what? The Bills, they'll put pressure on them and they'll be in there. So to me, it's Bills or pass. I haven't played it yet. Certainly will not tease Dallas. It would seemingly be that they're going to have a real strong performance now back home, but I gotta see better performances against the better teams. And the Bills are not New England, Minnesota, Green Bay, New Orleans. They're not that level, and that's who Dallas has lost to. But Bills defense is good enough, I think, to keep them close.
Well, Jay, let's talk about a leg that does look pretty interesting as far as the teaser goes. New Orleans Saints, 6.5-point favorites on the road at the Falcons. Falcons came back down to earth last week. We all suspected that it was a little bit of smoke and mirrors that was going on with that Falcons team. And lo and behold, there was some smoke and mirrors that were going on, and the Bucs and Jameis Winston go get it done against this Falcons team. And actually, not only that, Falcons offense looked bad as well. So not only did the defense come back down to earth, but the offense couldn't get anything going against this Bucs secondary that had been torched all year long. Now the Saints prime for a teaser here, taking that 6.5 down to a 0.5 point here. You talked about maybe the Lions as a leg as well. Do you have a Turkey Day teaser here on the Saints and Lions maybe?
That's the way I would look. I haven't done it, but that's after what the Saints, how they performed against Atlanta the first time, they're going to be ready here and very motivated to come back stronger. I think I'm going to dig into the last handful of weeks more in this total, because I think on a Thanksgiving and they're divisions teams and they know each other, and we just didn't see the scoring in the first time, but I'm certain we're going to see much more scoring than we saw when these teams met at 26-9 and the first round, and the Saints will certainly perform better, play better, put up more points. And last week, again, they showed that they're vulnerable. I mean, they gave up a pretty balanced attack to the Panthers last week, and I think the Falcons back home will definitely be. For years, we've seen them talk about how Matt Ryan is very strong and back in this home field and how they perform well. I think this total is going to be a little more scoring than expected, and I'm probably not going to shy away from 48.5, and I think we're going to see that probably go up a little bit.
Yep. Let's see here, Brett. I told you to be prepared. We were going to have a Turkey Day teaser, and what do you think about a Saints Lions here teaser leg? Getting that Saints down to basically a pick 'em, a 0.5 point. So all they got to do is win. This thing's not going to tie. So. And then you get that Lions up through even the 8, if you will, at this number, which 8 becoming a little bit more of a number that we look at now with the 2-point conversion becoming much more popular. What do you think about that?
I am not a teaser guy, but this looks right. I mean, I'm already I like the Lions as it is. So I mean, this feels right. Definitely. I mean, look. There are some narratives here with the Saints, like Jay said, that they just lost as 14-point favorites at home to this team a few weeks ago. They certainly haven't forgotten that. They're going to show up for this game. They've got a lot more to play for in this spot. So I can get behind the Turkey Day teaser.
Let's talk just 2 of the games that are going to draw a lot of action here this coming week and give our, early in the week opinions here, even earlier than normal. We should just sit here on a Tuesday because we want to get this to you guys before Thursday. But the 49ers on the road at the Ravens, going to be the game that everybody is talking about all week long here. 6-point favorites at home are this Ravens team. Brett, I might have made a rule for myself last night, and I think my rule for myself is Ravens or pass for the rest of the season. If I feel the urge to bet against the Ravens, I think I'm just going to pass on the game. If I feel good about a Ravens bet, then I'm going to bet on the Ravens, and I don't know if I'm going to fade the Ravens moving forward because it's two different times this year that I have thought that defenses that have played at a high level throughout the course of the season would be able to figure out a way to limit what Lamar Jackson is able to do. And two times I have been wrong on that. And I don't feel like I want to be, I don't feel like I want to be wrong again. I don't feel like I want to be wrong three times in the course of a season on this and cost myself even more money.
Yeah, it's tough because he is so dynamic, but the Niners have so much speed on that defensive line. I think if there's a team that can do it, I feel like I can't wait for this game. I think this could be a Super Bowl preview. I love the way the Niners are playing. They've got their guys back. Kittle was awesome on Sunday night. We kind of saw that. We saw that one playing out kind of like it did. I have not really taken a deep dive into this game yet. I can't wait to, and then I can't wait to watch it again. So very excited about this one. As far as the Ravens or fade, I can't see myself not betting against them when their price just continues to climb. How high can it go before it actually reaches where it should? I don't know, but it's so hard for me to not at least take a look at the other side against them.
It's going to be interesting to me to see how the Ravens decide to play Kittle in this game because I would probably just stick Marlon Humphrey on him. You know, I would probably let Jimmy Smith and Marcus Peters do their thing and let Marlon Humphrey, who's played a really good slot corner so far this year, basically operate over the middle, kind of shadowing George Kittle, because I mean, we said this when Brett, you and I, when we were kind of handicapping this game on the podcast last week, where we said, hey, look, if the 49ers have all their dudes back, then the 49ers are the play. If they don't have their dudes, then maybe it's the Packers, because this 49ers team is just a completely different team without their dudes. Well, they had their dudes, and what did they do? They go out there and smash. And so to me, I think if you're the Ravens, you look at George Kittle and you say, hey, look, beat me with Deebo Samuel if you want to, and beat me with Manny Sanders, but I'll be damned if I'm going to let you beat me with George Kittle. Pretty interesting game here to look at, though, Jay. I mean, we have two of the premier teams in the league, but we have a 6-point spread in this thing.
There's a lot of things to, I think, watch in this game for future as you look towards the playoffs. And first of all, let me just comment the weather. I think it's going to at least be getting colder here in Baltimore. And I think maybe if you're just hesitant on the side a little bit, the better way to look is maybe the total. And you've got the two number one running teams, not only in rushing yards, but in rushing attempts. They both run it for well over 30 times per game. And so it's going to be a battle of who can control the line of scrimmage and who can put their will on. And I think, you have to watch how is Lamar Jackson now going to perform against an elite defense this season anyway. The 49ers have it. I think you want to see how he how he has his progressions, how he's making his decisions in the pocket when he has to scramble and make the passes, because this is the test. Even though it's at home, this is going to be a real test, and maybe tell you how things come in the playoffs, because he's going to have to face the best defenses throughout. But I think the total is better to look. I will not play the Ravens. The stock is through the roof here on this team. Doesn't mean they won't get the win and cover, but I won't be there. It'll be if I did, I'm with you. I will never say never. Like, I won't play against the team, but I will say I think it's caution. Maybe you have to take an approach of either play on them or pass. But if I play a side, I'm looking at the 49ers, but I'm going to be on the under in this game. I think the Ravens defense has shown very strong. The San Francisco's has been very consistent most of the year, and I think this is going to be a real playoff type game, and I think the under is still pretty high, 46.5, 47. I think 46.5 now is coming down a little bit, so that's where I'll be.
I think the other game everyone is going to be talking about, Vikings and Seahawks, that Monday night game, nearly a week away, so we're not going to have a ton of numbers for you and things that we're digging into, but two teams that are very much in the playoff hunt, two teams that a lot of people are saying could be sneaky come playoff time here. Brett, when we take a look at this Vikings team, looks like they're going to have Adam Thielen back, which really kind of rounds out that team, which, look, they've been playing well anyway without him, but having Adam Thielen back, of course, you want to have that two-headed monster out there between him and Diggs, and then you throw in Dalvin Cook, and you really are cooking with that team. And then you see this Seahawks team that I was all over this week, won me so much money. And thank you so much, Russell Wilson and Seahawks, for everything you did for me this week. I will buy you guys a bottle of champagne if you were ever in Vegas. It was a splendid week thanks to you. At home as 2.5-point favorites here. Again, early, and everyone understands that, but Vikings, Seahawks, two playoff bound teams, it looks like. What do you think about this thing?
Yeah, this is one team that I like to fade on the road outdoors, and another team that has as strong a home field advantage in this league. That matters. I think you have to kind of throw away the 3-point home field away with these two teams. I think it matters more for the Seahawks. So initially, I look at this as advantage Seahawks. I think this probably should be 3.5. So we'll see where the line moves throughout the week. But like you said, the Thielen return definitely matters. He's such a crucial part of this offense because they've had nobody really outside of Diggs to throw the ball to. It's BC Johnson and
Laquan Treadwell. Laquan Treadwell. Yeah,
and they haven't had Rudolph. I mean, it's they've got to get their weapons back, and Thielen's it. So this is going to be an awesome game. We went past the Patriots and Texans. That one's also kind of interesting too. But I guess we'll get into that later in the week. But some fun games this week, especially later in the week.
Jay, any thoughts on that Pats, Texans, or Vikings, Seahawks? Again, a week away, but there's going to be people Sunday night game, Monday night game. These are going to be two massive handle games.
Bet the Vikings at 3, and if they get the 3.5, you'll see. And I agree with Brett. The Vikings outdoors at times have shown that there's a struggle, and this home field is very strong. But Seattle they're living well. This is not a 9-2 team. They're not as good as their record, and clearly you are what you are. You can argue all that. This is a defense that's still allowing 5.8 yards per play. I just don't see. I've been on here a number of times saying they're not as good as their record and they find ways to win. And Wilson he's had to carry this team offensively because their defense has been giving up, a lot of points throughout the season. And this past week, of course, they show pretty well, but Philly's banged up and they got injuries and they don't have the receivers. And the Vikings is to me, a pretty good play this week, and I'll definitely be on them. I'm going to watch a little bit. I played them 3 because I thought the line would come down and not go up, but I'm going to see where it's at moving forward, and then back to kind of the rest of the schedule as you look forward. We talked a little bit about this, but I think the Vikings have been battle tested throughout. I think they're going to show well here, even in a tough environment on Monday night.
A little bit of news just as we were sitting here recording this, and funny, we just got off a giant diatribe about this whole game here and different things that we look for. Ravens placed their center on injured reserve, and
wow.
And we know that rushing attack for the Ravens is so incredibly massive. He had not missed a single snap before week 12, so interesting there, Brett. You were just asking things we look for, and the center for the Ravens with a team that runs the ball as much as they do, going down a guy that had not missed a snap heading into week number 12.
I have a feeling by the end of the week I'm going to be all over the 49ers. I'm gonna have to do it. Like you said, it's Ravens or fade. I have to go
under.
or under. Yeah, I guess you could go that way, but man,
interesting
that's big
stuff
against
for
that
sure.
defensive line.
It really, really is. Guys, enjoy your Thursday football. Seriously, enjoy the time with friends and family and take it all in. It is pretty much no better day in sports because everybody's sitting at home. Everybody's going to be watching. Everybody you text or talk to is going to have an opinion on things that are going on. So Thursday games are so incredible. And we do talk a little bit of DFS on this podcast. And Brett, I think we shouldn't get out of here without saying that Traditionally, to me, Thanksgiving Thursday has been the very best day of DFS for me over the last basically 5 or 6 years because of the reasons we just mentioned, because everyone's home, everyone's off work, everyone is looking for something to gamble on, and you get people firing up their DraftKings accounts that haven't even logged in since last Thanksgiving and start playing. And typically Thanksgiving Thursday has been incredibly profitable. So if you are out there and you kind of dabble in the DFS streets, I would highly recommend getting involved on Thanksgiving Thursday.
Yeah, especially that free contest on DraftKings. If you've never played, that's a great one to get, just try out. Historically, I've been awful on Thanksgiving Day because I forget to change my lineup during the day, which is never good. I get easily distracted on Thanksgiving Day because we're traveling around Buffalo.
Right.
That's more value for guys
True.
like you.
If you're going to be camped out, then I should say, if you're going to be camped out, then if you're going to be camped out, definitely take advantage of that, because man, it is just. Actually, you brought up a great point, because there's going to be people who want to play who really can't pay all that much attention because they're having to do the different houses and family things and whatnot. But it's Thanksgiving Thursday has traditionally been very, very good to me, and probably can be good to you as well, guys. As always, every bit of the content on the lines and play picks is absolutely free, so please go and take a look at all the articles. Jay does great work over there. We got some other guys doing some really great work breaking down basically every single thing that you can bet on here in this great land of ours. So take advantage of all of that stuff, and of course the very awesome Thanksgiving Day offers that are coming out with these sports books that are all broken down over there on the lines and play picks as well. For Brett, for Jay, I'm Matt. See you guys next week.